continue to chair. Thank you.
Do you have a quorum?
Yes, we have.
Okay, good. Thank you all for coming today. Senator Moody, if you will, would you please present Senate Bill?
That's what we're having.
Excuse me. I didn't realize that was. I retract my request. If we can, let's hear Senator Stevens and Senate Bill 500, if you will, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Moody and I just look a lot alike. I know. Ready?
Please continue.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 500. Just as trivia, I will point out that I've been in the Senate 8 years and started as a freshman senator and been majority leader twice and floor leader and have never presented to a House committee. Can you imagine that? So thank you for the honor of being here today.
I feel honored that you're presenting to this committee.
Yeah. Senate Bill 500, before you today, I mentioned when it was presented to the Senate, I think ultimately could be one of the more important pieces of legislation that we present this year. And what it does is it creates a pilot program for the purpose of testing a verifiable paper audit trail for Georgia's electronic voting machines, kind of in keeping with my hope that someday that this state has the most secure voting system in the country. We did a little bit of work on that with the voter ID and all that, so this is a subsequent step to it. Without belaboring the point, I'm just going to just deal directly with how the bill as presented works. Senate Bill 500 just requires the Secretary of State's office to conduct a pilot program in each of 3 different counties in Georgia for the purpose of just testing and verifying the results from the electronic voting machines. It picks Bibb County, Camden County, and Cobb counties as the 3 counties. The idea being that a single precinct in each county would be selected, and the precincts would be selected to try to get a demographic mix that looks like Georgia. And we were thinking with those 3 counties, with the diversity that's in particularly in Cobb and in Bibb County, you could find some precincts which, if you combine the 3 precincts, would match the demographics of Georgia. So we thought that was a good thing to do. It conducts a test in the November elections. It requires the Secretary of State's office to conduct an audit within 30 days of the results of the election and compare the actual audit trail with the actual results of the votes that were cast by the electronic voting machines. The idea sprang from the notion that it is crucial and important for people in Georgia to believe the results of their election. And it passed Senate by a vote of 51-0. It's one of the few things in the elections process I've seen that actually seem to have a bipartisan tone to it. People on both sides of the aisle seem to like the idea, and with the notion of making Georgia's voting system the most secure in the nation. So that's a quick overview, and you've had time to study it, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure there are other questions. So that's basically, I know you have other people to testify. If it's okay, I'll take whatever questions you have or whatever the procedure is here in the House, and then
we would
come back.
Are there any questions of the members of the committee? Senator, you and I both know, since we've been involved in the political process for a number of years, that the elections in Georgia have not always been the most honest. And with the advent of the electronic equipment, it's become questionable. And I think that at some point this morning we will hear from, or this afternoon we will hear from a few people in regards to their concerns about the electronic equipment. But this is a step in the right direction.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know when it's appropriate to make comments. If there are changes in the bill as it goes along, if I could be allowed at some point to make comments on those as it's appropriate,
sir.
I would appreciate it.
Senator, you can do it at any time you wish.
Thank you.
Excuse me, are the microphones on? We can't hear.
Cannot hear? They're on. Maybe if I turn the volume up, how's that?
Yes.
Are there any questions of the... Okay. Senator, if you would come back to the podium, please.
Yes, sir.
You and I have discussed the possibility of making an amendment to the legislation that you've introduced. And what it was to take the paper trail portion that you have in your bill and actually have a count in the precinct the night of the election of one race, and only one race, which is determined by the luck of the draw. And since this is an experiment, and we're only this legislation sunsets, I believe, on December 31st, doesn't it?
No, sir. That's not the exact date, but it does sunset after the
After
test.
election, yes. I thought it was the 31st, but after the test is completed. It is the 31st. Well, we have January 1, 2007, and the 31st.
Either way, it goes away.
Within 24 hours of our guesstimate. And your desire to cooperate with the possibility of checking out the process of doing the count of one race in a precinct, since we're only dealing with 3 counties and 3 precincts. I want to commend you, and we have a substitute that if you would like to speak to the substitute, I would like you to do so.
I would briefly. It is true that you and I have discussed the substitute that you're going to offer, and I have communicated to you privately that, and now publicly, I do have just a few reservations about it. Just in terms of, I'm concerned about what the potential would be in terms of the time it would take to conduct such a count the night of the election, doing this for the first time. I think Senate Bill 500, the way it was structured, was designed to not impact in any way adversely the results of the November 2006 elections. So I see the potential for that if you have the counties of Cobb, Camden, and Bibb, and if a count is conducted that night and somebody comes up short, inevitably a candidate whoever loses is going to contest the election. I just want to make it clear that ends up being a gubernatorial election, or otherwise it was not my idea. So I would be very careful with what we're doing. The other thing is I'm aware of the experience Nevada had, and when they decided to do such a thing, and it took 66 hours to complete the count. Now, admittedly, that was several different elections on the same ballot. So I would watch that. I would also, I think you'll get some other testimony that may communicate some reservations about it. Now, having said that, I've been around here long enough to know that a camel's a thoroughbred racehorse designed by legislative process. So, we go up and down, in and around, and amendments. I think this bill ought to move forward. And I think we're kind of approaching the 6th or 7th inning of a 9-inning ball game if you look at the session coming to an end. I'd like for it to move forward. But I just want to make it clear I do have reservations about doing any kind of count that evening, because I think you're going to end up pushing the results of some very important elections in November longer into the next day or beyond than you really want. So with that caveat, those are my thoughts.
Well, that may be true if you were going to count every race, but that isn't the way. As you know, you only count one race, and that race is decided as to which race it will be in that precinct that night after they have closed the precinct. So the delay may be 30 minutes, but I doubt that it's going to be much longer than that. And this is an experiment to see what will work, and then proceed from there.
Yes, sir.
Any questions of the members?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Yes.
question. We are entertaining consideration of a committee substitute to Senate Bill 500.
That's correct.
The committee has not taken any votes on Senate Bill 500, so I'm curious as to how it is that we have a committee substitute.
Well, we have to vote on the committee. You're right. We have to vote on 500 first and then decide whether we're going to have a committee substitute. Do I hear a motion on 500? At the proper time. Yes.
Are we, I apologize, as you know, I had to run across and bring a bill back. Are we done with the testimony?
Yes, we are. Wait,
Question.
You got the questions, excuse me. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We have not heard from the state elections director. Anytime we're passing a piece of legislation relative to the elections process, should we not hear from the person who is given the responsibility of executing the elections in this state?
We have heard from, in subcommittee, we heard from the state elections director, but we can proceed and ask the state elections director to come forward at this time, if you will, please.
Thank you, Representative Committee members. I did speak with you about House Bill 790 a week or so ago, and at that time I talked to you a little bit about the administration of elections at the polling place. I'd like for you to simply stop and envision the polling place at 7 p.m. on election night. The equipment that we'll be using with Senate Bill 500, which, by the way, is a very good bill in its current form as it did pass the Senate, we'll be utilizing equipment that has a voter verifiable paper audit trail. The paper audit trail is encased in canisters which are attached to the voting unit. These canisters contain reel-to-reel tape that is rolled up in a continuous feed. Each unit could have up to 100 ballots cast per unit. We're currently looking at using polling places with approximately 10 units per poll. In November, that could be 1,000 ballots per precinct. Close of the polls, 7 o'clock. The poll workers will be asked to remove, under this revised bill, be asked to remove the canister, open the canister, and begin to unreel the paper, which, as I shared with you and I showed you this photo, which is not a made-up photo, it's real and true and accurate of what the paper roll looks like when it's rolled out in a warehouse. And this was in Nevada, where they audited after the election. Picture the poll workers removing the canister from the unit and trying to unroll this paper and count potentially 1,000 ballots, even if you're only counting one race. At the conclusion of the count, according to the revised bill, the poll workers will post the hand count on the door of the precinct along with the DRE tapes. It says the hand count will prevail in the certified election results. I don't know about you, but I know that when I even balance my own checkbook, sometimes I do it more than once, and that's using a calculator. I think we're asking an incredible lot of people who are already making very, very small amounts of money. Ballots aren't really counted at polling places anymore. Yes, they're tabulated, but actual hand counts don't occur at the polling place except for paper ballots in some rural municipalities. We've moved away from that. That's truly the way it was done many, many decades ago when paper was manipulated, and it's been manipulated time and time again. I think that you're going to have counties who have to send in a second team of poll workers to assist in this counting process. I'll share with you briefly, because I respectfully disagree with the fact that you believe it might be 30 minutes longer. We don't know until we do it. But in Nevada, as I shared with you last time, even if the poll workers count at a speedy 2 minutes per ballot, and that's pretty fast to count at 2 minutes per ballot, the average time to count all the races on the ballot would be 33 hours. At a mere 200 votes per precinct at 2 minutes, we're talking 6 hours. So even if you're counting one race, by the time you unroll the paper and count that particular race and record it, how many times are they going to do that? If they miscount the first time, are they going to post those results? And what's posted is the certified results? Or are the poll workers going to be asked there to stay and count again? At what point do you decide what's the official record of the ballot? Senate Bill 500 calls for a complete audit of every race on the ballot within 30 days of the election, prior to anybody taking office. A complete audit of every race on the ballot will be counted, and it will be compared in the elections office. That count will be advertised. It will be public. Anyone can come observe that count. There will be teams of people counting in a controlled environment, something that I think would be far more advantageous than this revised bill. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions to the witness? What's your number?
Would you mind just pointing out in Senate Bill 500, the last thing that you talked about, where the complete audit of every vote?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to. Toward the very end of the bill, it's in item D, and I'm currently looking at the amended version. It says, in addition to the count performed at the close of the polls, the Secretary of State shall cause a complete manual audit to be performed on each DRE unit used in the pilot project for voting within 30 days of the general election and within 30 days of the runoff. The audit will compare the results of the permanent records from each DRE unit with the electronic record, and the results of that audit will be made available to the public upon the completion of the audit.
It's page 3, lines about 18 on. Not in the, it's in the substitute as well.
In the original bill,
It's in the original bill.
page 3, line 18.
It's in the substitute as well. See it?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions of the witness?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Ms. Rogers, if the Senate Bill 500 moves forward in the original version of what we were intending to have, is that, in your estimation, do these 3 counties have available to them the resources to execute this bill without additional state help?
In the original version of the bill?
The original version of the bill.
In the original version of the bill, we anticipate the pilot could cost $50,000 or less. We won't cost any more than that. And Senator Stevens has pledged to assist in getting the money to pay for the pilot so that this will not cost the counties anything. We are not paying for poll workers, though. Under the revised bill, they would be required to have additional poll workers, and that's not part of the funding.
Can we make sure that we're talking about the same things when we're talking about the original bill?
As passed out of the Senate, I should put it that way.
As passed out of the Senate.
Yes, ma'am.
And when you're talking about the revised bill, you are referring to the one that's listed as the House Committee on Governmental Affairs substitute.
Correct.
So the original bill would cost $50,000.
Or less.
Or less.
That's a high estimate. I just didn't want to underestimate it. currently anticipate it's going to cost between $30,000 and $50,000. And that's, majority of those funds are to lease the equipment.
Any other questions?
Follow-up, please.
Please.
To lease the equipment. That therefore means that the machines as we now own them are not equipped to actually handle.
In their current form, no ma'am, they are not.
So we just bring in some additional software, or we bring in
Well,
an attachment?
We'll actually be leasing the next generation of equipment that has a voter verifiable paper audit trail. We'll be performing a state certification on it. The model that we intend to use for this pilot has already passed national qualification testing, which is required by Georgia law. We would perform a state certification on that particular unit and would use that for the pilot. The existing equipment would require some type of retrofitting in order to install a paper audit trail onto it. As for the software question, we'll be leasing, along with the equipment, the software. We'll have the source code escrowed at the Center for Election Systems for that particular version, just as we do for all versions of software. And we will also lease the software that's needed to be loaded onto each computer in those 3 counties.
Ms. Rogers, you're saying that you're not going to be testing any of the equipment that you have in place today?
No, sir. The equipment we currently use does not have a voter verifiable paper audit trail on it.
And you cannot retrofit it?
The vendor could possibly retrofit it if they were asked to go through research and development, but there would definitely have to be some funds available for that, and the General Assembly to date has not appropriated such.
Is Georgia the first state that has requested a paper trail?
No. In 2002, when we first bought the equipment, there wasn't any equipment on the market that had currently gone through national testing that had a voter verifiable paper audit trail. Some states are just now beginning to use the equipment that we're talking about leasing. States of Ohio, Utah are 2 that immediately come to mind. California is currently in the process of completing certification. They'll have equipment with a voter verifiable paper audit trail used in some of their counties, but Ohio and Utah are 2 that have gone statewide with that requirement.
Any further questions of the witness? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Garland, Fivaretto, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first thing I want to do is I want to thank you, and I want to thank Senator Stevens. Senator Stevens, I don't think anybody in the legislature has done more than the senator to get this issue out and try to seek a consensus on it. And I don't think that anybody in the legislature has done more to try to seek a real solution to this problem than you, Mr. Chairman. And there are a lot of people here I think are grateful for that. I'm going to be careful not to repeat any testimony that I've already given you in regards to HB 790, except for a quick, maybe 30-second summary of where we stand that for the benefit of the committee members that were not here for that testimony, for had other commitments. Georgia is rated dead last nationally in voting systems implementation. No voter can verify whether or not their ballot was recorded correctly. No poll worker can verify whether or not any machine counted correctly. Recounts are not possible. Only reprints of previous unverifiable results, and errors and fraud are virtually undetectable statewide. Prior to 2002, 83% of Georgia voted on auditable optical scan or punch card ballots. That percentage is now 0%. At the request of Representative Buckner, she had asked for the reports and that I mentioned to you in the last meeting, and I've sent those to you. I trust you got those the day after the hearing, and I've also got hard copies that I'm leaving for the committee. The states of California, Nevada, and Maryland have all officially concluded that the same types of software and hardware that we run here are inadequate to conduct elections in their states. California sued Diebold, got a $2.5 million out-of-court settlement. Maryland just voted 137 to nothing to remove the machines from the 2006 election and replace them with optical scan. devices, and we applaud that decision. In regards to SB 500, again, I want to thank Senator Stevens for getting us this far. I really appreciate that, Senator. And as the Senator stated, this is a self-repealing three-precinct audit trail pilot. It does not rectify any of the previously described problems that Georgia has that I've just talked about. And we have concerns about that. It also really, we don't see that it serves any purpose because it doesn't require the voter-verified paper ballot audit trails to ever be implemented. In addition, as you point out, Mr. Chairman, it doesn't verify the feasibility of election night precinct hand counts for auditing that most of us here believe are critical to the accurate elections. The only way that we can verify that these machines are counting correctly on election night is to verify that they're counting correctly on election night. As I testified before you previously, certification can be bypassed easily. The machines can be made to count differently on different days of the week. They can be triggered to count differently without changing the source code, and illegal and uncertified patches can be applied after the software has been pilot tested or certified. Our analysis shows that all 7 million ballots that have been cast in Georgia in 2002 and 2004 were cast on illegal, uncertified software that was patched into our machines. And we will, there's not anything necessarily wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily because they could be legitimate patches. However, we do not know whether or not that's correct or not.
Mr. Ferberito, if you would, we have a question.
Yes.
Can I ask, I mean, you're obviously extremely passionate about this. You've just made an absolute statement. I'm not saying that I agree with it. I'm saying you made an absolute statement that every vote that was cast illegally in the state.
I said that our analysis did. And the election board has already confirmed that for 2004. I think you can check that.
And again, with your passion for this issue, why haven't you filed a lawsuit?
The reason that we have not filed a lawsuit is because, and we've talked about this quite often, but we believe that if we present the irrefutable, overwhelming evidence to the legislature, that the legislature will do the right thing. And that's why we're here. We don't want to do what Maryland did. It was successful in Maryland, but we believe in the people that we elected to office.
I take issue with some of your comments about.
I will withdraw that comment. I will withdraw that comment at the respect of the chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was not finished.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway, so this is why we need voter verified.
Excuse me. Before you proceed, all of you are not going to be able to speak because we only have an hour in this room and we have 2 bills that we have to hear. So we have only got a little bit more time left. Please proceed. And I'd like to note that 1 or 2 of the people on the list have asked to yield their time to me to finish the testimony. The elections director testified, and just as she did once again, that we cannot count the ballots in the precinct on election night. Well, and she testified several different things at our last hearing. Let me just recap 3 of them that I think were very important. In the last hearing, she stated that we are required to implement voluntary federal guidelines. That is not correct. As most of you here know, the U.S. Constitution gives the states power to run elections, and voluntary means voluntary the last time that I looked in the dictionary. There is no Georgia law that requires us to implement a voluntary federal guideline. And I brought the election law, and I asked the elections director to please find the law in here and show it to the committee. The elections division may have rules and regulations, but I would like to remind the director that they are subordinate to Georgia law, not the other way around. The other testimony, as we've heard, that it was very dramatic, the 319-foot roll of paper that only had 64 ballots on it, and therefore we cannot count. This is going to be a horrible disaster. So I thought I would just show you that we don't have to have 5-foot ballots. Okay, this is these are ballots in my hand that can be produced
from a computer. This is a 17-race ballot. The only thing that has to be on the ballot is the names of the races and the candidates for which the voter voted, nothing else, plus a ballot identification and maybe a couple of more items. So I have in my hand here the 64 ballots that were supposed to go on the 319-foot roll of paper. You can fit this in the palm of your hand. Now, the truth is that you probably want to make this a little bit bigger. It might be a 5-inch ballot to get all the information on it the way you would like. However, it's certainly not going to be 5 feet. The last thing we've heard, and the most amazing thing to me that I've heard, is that it's going to take anywhere between 33 to 66 hours to count a single race in the precinct. And I do not understand that. The chairman has testified that it takes 30 minutes, and I think that we would certainly agree with that. Now, while the elections director was testifying adamantly against voter-verified paper ballot audit trails and vote count verification, we were receiving information from the office that said that they support it. So I don't know how. I'm not getting this. We're hearing that they support it, but they were showing us that they don't when we testify. So there is a condition, something strange. But anyway, what I would like to do is, with the permission, I think that there's a discrepancy, and I understand that there's a difference in testimony here that neither one of us cannot possibly be telling the truth. And let me,
Please, let's don't start accusing people of anything other than the truth. Please.
All right. I would like to get on the record. I'd just like to bring the committee up to date on the brief history of how did we get to this point. And because it's important for your vote.
You've got 2 minutes because we are running out of time. Please.
All right, then I will bypass that. A lot of people ask us what state's done it right, and I like to present the historical precedent of Maryland. They have the same vendor, the same machine series, software problems, and they've had a lot of credibility issues there as well. I'll raise to you, I think the chairman has a copy of the Governor Elrick's February 15th, 6th letter to the Board of Elections, where he says he no longer has confidence in the State Board of Elections' ability to conduct fair and accurate elections in 2006. And he also goes on to say that their own elections administration is not working on the interests of the citizens. Now, that sounds like a partisan statement to me. However, the legislature voted 137 to nothing, I want to point out to the committee, to prohibit the board from using the same AccuVote TS series machines that we have in their 2006 elections, and they authorized immediate release of $16 million for the optical scan equipment. The key difference, as the chairman has pointed out, is that they did that as a result of a lawsuit here, and we have trusted we do not want to do that here. So let's just look at to recap and close out. What is the difference? What are the things that we are doing right today? What is preventing us from doing the right thing? It's not the technology. I mean, if the technology is that we're going to have a rolling paper ballot and we're buying all new computer equipment in order to conduct a test, that seems like we've got the wrong equipment. We volunteered to produce the ballot printing software for the state and donate it. If it's the money, Maryland voted unanimously to use their emergency funds to protect their citizens' rights. If it is I also like to point out that the election board just voted 2 weeks ago, for a $60 million expenditure for poll books, which we believe should have been spent on audit trails, because that's the key issue. There's no law preventing us from doing this. There's certainly no consensus issue, because the Senator Stevens bill passed 51 to nothing, and in Maryland it was 137 to nothing. And it's certainly not time. This is an issue that's for all of us, that's concerned of all of us, because this whole electronic voting conversion was made in 8 months. And now we're saying that we need years to do a pilot program and test it out and just put printers on these machines. It doesn't make any sense to the people here.
So, in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, we believe, a lot of us here, that if SB 500 was passed as is, it's going to bring a lot of ridicule to the legislature and the sponsors for 3 reasons. It doesn't have statewide implementation of voter-verified paper ballot audit trails that we need. It doesn't have, at least the original version that we just saw without the committee substitute, had no election night precinct audit to verify that the machines are counting correctly. That's the key thing. That's the only way to verify. Certification and pilot tests don't work. And it also really doesn't address the problems that I previously described. So what we're asking for is action similar to that in Maryland. They immediately replaced all of their equipment for the 2006 election, and that's their vote, and it's going to go to the Senate, I think, very, very soon. We have had 2 bills, bipartisan bill SB 591 in the Senate, which our input was graciously accepted, as well as HB 790 here, which our input was also graciously accepted by the committee, and we thank you for that. We appreciate it. So,
Mr. Favorito, if I may, you suggested that we replace all of that equipment. How much would that cost?
Well,
what would you replace it with?
Well, if I understand the election director's testimony correctly, and the pilot, and at least that's on the election board testimony, they're going to replace the entire equipment with the new technology of Diebold, which apparently still has a roll of paper and can't print a balance if I put all this together. So, and the estimates that we've gotten to do that from Kennesaw would run another $100 million. That seems kind of strange to me. So, obviously, optical scan would be much more cost effective. But in either case, the most important thing is to have that count at the precinct to verify that these machines are counting correctly on election night. It's the only way we can do that. So we would ask that you consider substituting HB 790. That's the most practical thing to do because it does have voter.
Thank you.
Voter verified.
I appreciate that, but what we're doing is we're here to hear.
Right, understand.
Senate Bill 500.
But the content is what I'm referring to. Is the content could be baked in. And let me I'll just close by asking the audience here, how many people want SB 500 in the current state? And we have one. How many people want? How many people believe that this needs to be enhanced with the things that I've talked about? So, Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of people that feel, and because we have been disenfranchised in 2002, that democracy is no longer working in Georgia. So we ask that we do the will of the people here and try to tell these people that their vote counts just as much as someone who lives in Maryland.
Mr. Favorito, before you get away, the chairman has a question of you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I would ask this, since we had a show of hands, how many of you believe that Senate Bill 500, as it is a step in the right direction? So 2 of you. And the others would rather us do nothing than pass Senate Bill 500. Is that
It's a false choice.
No, it's not. It's a fair statement. I mean,
HB 790
that's. Thank you for the.
And the other choice is the amended version as well.
Thank you, Mr. Favorito.
I'll leave these reports. I'm leaving the reports with the chairman. And also includes all the Maryland reports.
Who is that? Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I may want to address this to the gentleman since he was polling the audience. As I've looked at the substitute for SB 500, that has got certain parts of 790 integrated into it. And while I certainly think it's 790 would be a way to go, I understand in the subcommittee that was tabled in the subcommittee, and realistically, I've been here long enough that I have seen a lot of things that I want never passes. A lot of things get tabled, but like to ask y'all from the substitute to 500 that integrates certain parts of 790 into it. Is that what y'all would like to see? Or at least, I mean, that seems to me to be at least a move forward.
Yes, well, I think that we would agree that that is a move forward. The issue that we have is with the pilot. If you compare that to Maryland, they are throwing all of their machines out for the 2006 election because this is such a serious issue, and they're replacing it with optical lease band. I agree with Representative Powell. That would be a step forward if we included the precinct hand count in Senator Stevens' bill, and that would be a step forward because it would prove whether or not it takes 33 hours or 30 minutes or 66 hours to count a single race in the precinct. So, yes, I would agree, but the issues we still have is that compared to Maryland, the pilot is somewhat of a slap in the face to the people in Georgia.
But it is a start in the right direction, isn't it?
I think we would agree with that.
Thank you. I believe we're at the point, especially since we're running out of time, for a motion, if you will, on Senate Bill 500.
At proper time, I would like to offer an amendment to Senate Bill 500. In fact, I have two amendments.
Please.
On page, the original bill.
I believe we need a motion to pass.
Yeah, there's no motion yet.
Move do pass.
Second? From 500.
Substitute?
No, from the original. Are you not working
From the original LS 2829553S.
Please, please proceed.
I would offer to Senate Bill 500 the following two amendments. On page 3, line 27, we'll stay at line 27.
27 says Section 3.
Okay, well, that would bump it down when we add a new section, F. Following line 26, which is section E, we would add a new section F that would read, "The state of Georgia shall provide the funds needed to implement this pilot project. Implementation of the pilot project shall be dependent upon funding."
Would you repeat that, please?
This, new section F, "The state of Georgia shall provide the funding needed to implement said pilot project. Implementation of the pilot project shall be dependent upon funding."
Is there a second on that amendment?
Representative, if I may,
Yes.
I believe that amendment would fit better at line 26 and make it subsection E and then make the current E F.
That's fine.
So we'll
I agree.
you're gonna, just a suggestion.
Is that a suggestion?
I accept the...
Accept the suggestion?
I accept the suggestion.
Thank you. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. All those in favor of the amendment as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. So amended. Did
Okay.
you say you had another amendment?
Yes. And that, following that with a new section that would that would read, 45 days after the election, the Secretary of State shall conduct a public hearing in the pilot project areas. A summary of these comments shall be submitted to the Georgia General Assembly.
Is there a second to that motion?
Can you repeat that?
45 days after the election,
This is a new section 3.
this new section. The Secretary of State shall conduct a public hearing in the pilot areas. The summary of these comments shall be submitted to the Georgia General Assembly. Actually, that should say within 45 days. Otherwise, we don't want to look like we're mandating that on exactly 45 days these public hearings would be held, but within 45 days.
Can you read that one more time, please?
Within 45 days after the election, the Secretary of State shall conduct a public hearing in the pilot areas. A summary of these comments shall be submitted to the Georgia General Assembly.
Would you be willing to change the language to say report of the findings as well as comments?
I would accept that.
I think that would give us a broader.
A summary of the findings.
And section 3 will become section 4?
Yes.
Representative, I think it would also be good if we added to that, that report would be available to the public as well.
Well,
I think it would be once it was provided to us, but I think abundance of caution.
that's fine. Any document we have is available to the public anyway, so. That's it.
Is there a second on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. If there is no more perfection of the bill itself, I would like to,
I'd like to get a clarification, Mr. Chapman, if you good?
please, Representative Powell.
If I understand, we're working back off the original 500 as amended. And if we wanted to work from the substitute that had a little bit more substance as far as moving toward more verifiable audit trail, what would be the procedure that we need to move to?
I believe we would have to vote on
down?
Vote down 500 and vote the amendment out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion on House Bill 500? I'm sorry, Senate Bill 500.
Mr. Chairman, I move to pass Senate Bill 500
Second, as amended?
as amended.
You move do pass on LC 28, 29, 53S.
Mr. Chairman, it would be the committee substitute. The Governmental Affairs Committee substitute.
Will we move to that without, I thought we had to move on the first.
Well, the amendments have been moved and adopted. And so the proper motion, I believe, is do pass
As amended by the committee.
by committee substitute.
Well, I so
This
move,
would be
Mr.
SB
Chairman.
500.
But the LC number is still the same.
It would change.
And
5953S,
yes,
2953S.
correct. Do I hear a motion? We had a motion, we had a second.
So move as amended by the committee.
Thank you. All those in favor of the,
Chairman, if I may,
yes.
I just want to check. And we may need legal counsel to clarify this. If SB 500 as committee sub fails, then it requires another committee meeting to pass. That's right.
Then motion would be in order for the substitute that we've been looking at also.
That's correct.
Okay. But, and if that motion fails, then SB 500 we'll have to put it on a different committee meeting.
If SB 500 substitute fails, you're saying? Is that correct?
We actually now have two governmental affairs substitutes that we're working from. We've got the one that started with LC 282953S that was successfully amended twice, and that's the one that the motion is on. Do pass. If it fails, then a motion do pass on LC 283082S
Be in order.
is in order. Then if that motion fails, we're adjourned without passage of a bill.
Does everybody understand that?
I just want to make sure everybody understands the posture that we're in. That is correct, isn't
We could, if
Well-
we defeat both bills, we have no bill.
Correct.
Well, I would encourage the members to take a good look at the other substitute. I think that is more far-ranging to get us at least ways a few more steps down the road toward verifiable elections and legitimacy.
Please. Thank you.
Point of clarification. The committee isn't through until we vote to adjourn.
That's correct.
And should either bill or both bills be voted down, we can continue to come back and look at these bills as long as the committee is willing to work on the bills.
That's correct. We have a motion and a second.
Actually, you don't have a second.
I'm sorry.
On the amended bill. You have a motion, and I will make a second.
I thought you did make a second. I'm sorry.
That was on the
Okay, all right.
originally
All right,
to
thank
get
you.
us to the amendments.
Thank you. All those in favor of Senate Bill 500 as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
No. Now,
Might be recognized.
before we recognize, I think you would like to amend the substitute, wouldn't you? Would you make a motion to, accordingly, please?
Well, I make a motion, we have a motion to accept the committee substitute from Representative Powell, is that correct?
That's correct.
I'd like to move that we accept LC 283082S.
And you have a second. And now you're
I've
ready
moved,
for
yes.
amendment.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would move that on, prior to Section 3,
Page 5.
okay, page 5, after line 28, after line 27, we would have a new section F that would read,
No. Excuse me, Matt. We would have a new section.
if we're bumping
You're
down.
right. It
Yes.
is new section F.
Okay, a new section F, and everything else would fall into place after that.
And F would become G.
Correct.
Okay.
The state of Georgia shall provide the funding needed to implement said pilot project. Implementation of the pilot project shall be dependent upon funding. I'm going to offer the same, also you want to vote on them separately or together?
No, we can put them together if you'll offer the same one.
Okay, and then following that, same amendment within 45 days after the election.
A new section 3.
Secretary of State shall conduct a public hearing in the pilot areas. A summary of the findings and comments shall be submitted to the Georgia General Assembly and made available to the public.
Which is a new section 3, and section 3 will become section 4. Correct?
Correct.
And section 4 becomes section 5, correct?
Okay, everything else just moves down. when that's inserted.
Is there a second?
Total funding. I'd like a point of inquiry.
State your point.
And I understand both your amendments. I have concern about the first amendment, about the state shall appropriate the money. While I agree with it, the state should, but I have concerns that if the state does not, or if something happens in the budget process, that would be a death knell to the provisions of this bill.
Well, that should prevail upon those who are interested in seeing this to make sure that that money is in the budget.
I understand, but as we all know, the appropriations process works independently and separately of general legislation. And the question I've got is, could that not possibly be the death knell to this?
Well, a death knell could also be the fact if the local elections board or the local county commission don't have the money to implement it.
Chairman, if I, and Senator Stevens may be able to answer this, and I apologize.
Senator Stevens, if you would, please.
Or the people who are in the bill, is that at their request?
The original counties?
Right.
There were discussions that took place with the Secretary of State's office about which counties had an interest in the legislation and an experimental program, and which had the capabilities to handle such an experiment, and these counties qualified on both counts.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, can we hear from Mr. Grubier?
Mr. Grubier, would you please step forward, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, I'm with Jim Grubiak, representing the County Commissioners Association of Georgia, but I was specifically asked to come before this body by Cobb County. Cobb County is one of the volunteers, I guess you'd say, in this pilot project. They do support 500. There's no doubt about it. They are willing to do it, but they need to do to participate in the pilot project. However, they are concerned about the substitute language that would require the hand count. Their concern goes to the poll workers who will already be working 12 and 14 hours at that point in time, going to be asked to stay however long, whether it takes 30 minutes or 3 hours. So they're concerned about the stress and the fatigue that the poll workers will be experiencing at that point in time, and it also may lead to errors in their counting if they've already been there for 12 hours or 10 hours or 13 hours, whatever it may be. Now they're counting, and so they're concerned about what effect that would have. Their elections board suggests that they may not want to be a participant in it if the substitute language is included in the bill, the hand count language is in the bill. So I'm just relaying that on behalf of Cobb County, and appreciate your time and letting me to do that for them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the members?
This to me just suggests that we ought to keep the amendment in there to make sure that there would be funds, and the county would not be expected to pay for the extra efforts themselves. They'd be able to hire extra poll workers for the count if that's what's necessary, and the state would be paying for it. So that would, this latest comment, I think, speaks in favor of the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Jenkins. If there is no further debate or questions from the members, do I hear, we don't have a motion on the floor yet, do we? Do I hear a motion?
Move to pass as amended.
A second?
Second.
We have a do pass as amended on LC 28.
Mr. Chairman, we have not voted on the amendments.
I thought we had. Did we get lost? Excuse me, I'm sorry. We'll back up. On the amendments that were added to the original bill that have been added to the committee substitute, do I hear a do pass?
to pass.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor of the amendments
Aye.
to the substitute bill? Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign? Thank you. Now, do I have a motion on Senate Bill 500 LC as amended by committee? I have a move and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We have 2 noes. All right. Thank you. We have another bill that the chairman will hear. Another Senate bill.
Senator Stevens will present here.
Is he? Senator Stevens, I understand you're going to present this bill.
Yes, sir, I can multitask.
Please, I'm sure
Senator
you can.
Moody has been called away to present one of the governor's bills, so I'm familiar with Senate Resolution 804, and I'll present that when the chairman is ready.
Yes. Thank you. Please proceed. Thank you, Senator.
Senate Resolution 804 simply creates a boundary commission for North Fulton County. It will be composed of 1 representative selected by each of the existing cities, and potentially, if actions are taken during the 06 General Assembly, 1 representative from each of the new proposed cities. The commission will study the boundaries of the cities in North Fulton, and if it's appropriate, will suggest boundary changes to the General Assembly by February 1st of next year for y'all's consideration. Any recommendations from the committee have to be done unanimously, and the committee will not convene until all members are appointed. So as a favor to the senator from the 56th, I'm presenting that relatively simple resolution and present it to you for your consideration.
Are there any questions of the senator? Yes, sir. Senator, Representative Jenkins.
First question is, are we talking about LC 28304-5S or LC 28307-2S?
The one that Senator Moody gave me to present is LC 28307-2S.
Thank you.
Senator Stevens, if I understand correctly, the difference is that the latest version will require unanimous agreement among the municipality.
Yes, sir, that is correct. As I understand it, it also clarifies to make sure that the committee can't convene until all members have been selected and appointed.
Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
It is the proper time.
I move to pass committee substitute to SR 804, LC 28307-2S.
Second.
We have a due pass and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. We stand adjourned.